For 10 seasons, CSI, Miami, put its cast under the same blinding Florida sun as its crime scenes, bright, glamorous, and impossible to look away from. From its premiere in 2002 through its finale in 2012, the show became a global ratings juggernaut, at one point reported as the most-watched television program in the world, syndicated into more than 200 countries. Millions of viewers tuned in every week to watch Horatio Caine's team chase killers through the neon-lit streets of a fictional Miami-Dade, sunglasses flipping on right before the theme music kicked in. But once the cameras stopped rolling and the sound stages went dark, the lives of the people who built that show took very different paths. Some found quiet, steady careers, marriages, and second acts far away from network television. Others faced heartbreak, addiction, devastating loss, and in one case, real-life terror that lasted over a decade. A few of the show's cast members didn't live to see the story's ending get written the way anyone would have wanted. Today we're looking back at the cast of CSI Miami, then and now, to see what really happened to the actors who once ruled Sunday nights on CBS. Evan Ellingson was only 19 when he joined CSI Miami in 2007 as Kyle Harmon, the son that Horatio Caine never knew he had. Over 18 episodes across 3 seasons, Ellingson brought a wounded, searching quality to the role, and it looked like the beginning of a long career, especially after he landed a part alongside Cameron Diaz and Abigail Breslin in the 2009 drama My Sister's Keeper. But Ellingson was carrying more than most people realized. He had grown up in La Verne, California, one of 4 brothers, and in his teenage years, he lost his older brother to a heroin overdose. In interviews years later, Ellingson said that loss was the moment his own life started to unravel. He began using drugs himself and never fully found his way back. His screen career quietly wound down after 2010, and the years that followed were marked by relapses, stretches of stability, and more relapses. He sought treatment as recently as 2021 at a recovery ranch and spoke publicly about wanting to stay clean. It wasn't enough. On November 5, 2023, Ellingson was found dead at a sober-living home in Fontana, California. He was 35. The San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department later confirmed the cause as an accidental fentanyl overdose, following an autopsy performed the day after his death. His family said in a statement that they were heartbroken by the sudden loss of our beloved son, brother, uncle, and friend. His father told reporters that Evan's mental health had actually seemed to be improving in the weeks before he died, and that he appeared to be making real progress in his recovery, which made the news of a relapse and overdose all the more shocking to those closest to him. Friends and former castmates flooded social media with tributes, many of them noting how uncanny his resemblance to David Caruso had been, which made him such a natural fit to play Caruso's on-screen son all those years earlier. Nicole DeHuff appeared in CSI Miami in a small but memorable role in 2003, playing crime lab technician Carrie Delgado, a few years after she'd broken through in the hit comedy Meet the Parents. A Carnegie Mellon drama graduate, DeHuff had built a reputation as a warm, versatile performer with a growing list of television credits, including Monk, The Practice, and Without a Trace. In February 2005, at just 30 years old, DeHuff began experiencing serious respiratory symptoms. She had a history of asthma, which made her more vulnerable to lung infections than most people her age. According to her mother, Patsy DeHuff, she sought help at 2 different Los Angeles hospitals and was misdiagnosed with bronchitis both times, sent home with little more than a painkiller, some Tylenol, and a course of antibiotics. Her condition worsened rapidly over the following days. On February 15th, she collapsed at home, gasping for air, and was rushed by ambulance to a 3rd hospital, where she lost consciousness. By the time doctors identified what was actually wrong, they found she was suffering from an aggressive pneumonia that had progressed into sepsis, a staph infection, and cardiac arrest. She died the next day, February 16, 2005, leaving behind her husband, director Ari Palitz, whom she had met at Carnegie Mellon, and a family that publicly questioned how 2 separate hospital visits could have missed an illness that serious. Her death remains one of the most quietly devastating stories connected to the show, a reminder of how quickly an ordinary illness can turn fatal when it isn't caught in time. Michael Madsen joined CSI, Miami in 2003, bringing his familiar big-screen toughness to the small screen as Detective Coop DeAndre Wolfe, already a Hollywood veteran from films like Reservoir Dogs, Thelma and Louise, and Kill Bill. Madsen spent decades moving between television guest spots and hundreds of film roles, eventually racking up close to 350 screen credits by the end of his career. Off-screen, Madsen battled alcoholism for much of his adult life, a struggle that led to legal trouble over the years, including a 2019 drunk driving crash and a 2024 arrest following a domestic dispute with his wife, Deanna. The greatest blow came in 2022, when his 26-year-old son Hudson died by suicide. Madsen later spoke and wrote publicly about how deeply that loss shook him, and he spent time in and out of treatment in the years that followed while continuing to work steadily in independent film. On July 3, 2025, Madsen was found unresponsive at his Malibu home after a 911 call and was pronounced dead at the scene. He was 67. His cardiologist later confirmed that he died of heart failure brought on by cardiac arrest, with cardiomyopathy, coronary artery disease, chronic alcoholism, and a related blood clotting condition, all listed as contributing factors on his death certificate, according to records obtained from the Los Angeles County Medical Examiner. Because his own doctor had been treating him and signed off on the certificate, no autopsy was required, and the death was ruled natural with no suspicion of foul play. Friends and his team said Madsen had been sober for months and appeared to be in good health just days before his death, following a routine doctor's visit. His sister, actress Virginia Madsen, remembered him in a statement as not a public figure, but flesh and blood and a ferocious heart, thunder and velvet, mischief wrapped in tenderness. Quentin Tarantino, his longtime collaborator across several films, later hosted a private memorial for him at Los Angeles' Vista Theater. Over more than 4 decades in the industry, Madsen left behind a body of work that spanned close to 350 film and television credits. Johnny Lewis had a brief guest appearance on CSI, Miami, in 2004, early in a career that would later take off with his role as Kip Halfsack, Epps on FX's Sons of Anarchy. For a few years, Lewis looked like one of Hollywood's rising young talents, dating singer Katy Perry and building a resume that included The O.C. and The Runaways. Everything changed in October 2011, when Lewis lost control of his motorcycle and suffered a head injury. He refused the MRIs his family and doctors urged him to get, and in the months that followed, those close to him described a frightening personality shift, confusion, paranoia, and violent outbursts that led to 3 arrests over the following year. He was also in the middle of a painful, ultimately unsuccessful custody battle over his young daughter with actress Diane Gaeta. A psychologist who later reviewed his case suggested Lewis may have developed an organic personality disorder caused by untreated brain trauma. On September 26, 2012, just 5 days after being released from jail, Lewis fatally attacked his 81-year-old landlady, Catherine Davis, at the Los Feliz home, where he had been renting a room, then fell to his death from the roof after also attacking neighbors who tried to intervene. He was 28. A toxicology report released weeks later confirmed Lewis had no alcohol, cocaine, marijuana, or other drugs in his system at the time of his death, a finding that surprised investigators who had initially suspected drug-induced psychosis. His family and a criminal psychologist who later reviewed the case both pointed instead to the untreated brain trauma from his motorcycle accident as the likely explanation for his violent break from reality. It remains one of the most disturbing and tragic off-screen stories connected to any cast member of the franchise, and a sobering example of how a single accident can unravel a promising life. Lisa Sheridan brought a quiet, layered presence to a guest role on CSI, Miami in 2002, a few years after standout turns on cult favorites Freaky Links and Invasion. Born in Macon, Georgia, and trained at Carnegie Mellon, Sheridan continued working steadily in television for the next decade, later appearing in Halt and Catch Fire. Behind the scenes, Sheridan struggled for years with alcohol and, according to a later autopsy, a history of benzodiazepine use. She had been engaged to actor Ron Livingston until 2003, and those who knew her described a warm, gentle person who nonetheless carried private pain. On February 25, 2019, Sheridan was found dead at her home in New Orleans. She was 44. In the days immediately after her death, rumors circulated online, suggesting she may have taken her own life. But her manager, Mitch Clem, firmly disputed that, telling reporters at the time that her family had unequivocally confirmed it was not a suicide. 3 months later, the Orleans Parish Coroner's Office released its findings, confirming the cause of death as complications from chronic alcoholism, with a reported history of benzodiazepine abuse and a remote brain injury from an earlier, unrelated fall listed as non-contributing factors, and ruling the manner of death natural. Friends, including actress Donna D'Errico, remembered her publicly as someone who brought warmth and bright energy into every room she entered, a legacy that outlasted the sadness of how her story ultimately ended. David Caruso became one of the defining faces of 2000s network television as Lieutenant Horatio Caine, the sunglasses and one-liners leader of the CSI, Miami Crime Lab, for all 10 seasons of the show. Long before that, Caruso had already lived through one of Hollywood's most talked-about career reversals, after a splashy exit from NYPD Blue in 1994 to pursue film stardom. His movie career stalled, and it was CSI, Miami, that resurrected his fortunes in a major way. Caruso's personal life has been quieter in the years since, and he has largely stepped back from the spotlight. He has been married multiple times over the decades, and after CSI, Miami wrapped in 2012, he moved away from steady acting work to focus on other pursuits, including art and business ventures based in Florida, the state that made his character famous. Unlike some of his castmates, Caruso rarely discusses his personal life publicly, and interviews with him have grown increasingly rare in the years since the finale. Today, in his late 60s, Caruso lives a comparatively private life, occasionally surfacing to talk about the show's legacy or his early NYPD Blue years, but largely avoiding the entertainment press that once followed his every move during the height of CSI Miami's popularity, when the show was broadcast in more countries than almost any other American drama on television. Emily Procter played ballistics expert Cowley Duquesne for all 10 seasons, a role that turned her gentle southern charm into one of the show's most enduring signatures. Before CSI Miami, Procter was already known to television audiences from The West Wing, and the Miami role cemented her as one of the genre's most recognizable faces. Motherhood came later in life for Procter. She had her first child in her 40s, and she has spoken about balancing that new chapter with the demands of a long-running series. More recently, Procter faced a different kind of loss. In January 2025, the Palisades Fire tore through her Los Angeles neighborhood, and in an emotional live interview on CNN, a visibly shaken Procter said she believed her home had been destroyed, learning the news secondhand from a stranger. She spoke movingly about the loss not just of a house, but of an entire close-knit community, thanking local firefighters for their work and urging people to support their neighbors however they could. She specifically thanked the local fire crews, who had stayed behind to fight the blaze, calling them as much a part of our neighborhood as anyone, and encouraged people watching at home to reach out to loved ones rather than feel helpless from a distance. In the months since the fires, Procter has kept a lower profile, splitting her time between family, interior design work she's pursued alongside acting for years, and a nonprofit organization she helped found, all while she and her neighbors have worked through the long process of rebuilding a community that fire briefly took away from them. Adam Rodriguez joined the cast in 2002 as Eric Delco, the dive team and ballistics specialist who became one of the show's most consistent presences across all 10 seasons. Rodriguez, who is of Puerto Rican and Cuban descent, has spoken in interviews over the years about the added hurdles he felt he faced breaking into an industry that didn't always make space for Latino leading men, hurdles that pushed him to expand beyond acting into writing and directing, including several episodes of CSI Miami itself. Since the show ended, Rodriguez has continued to work steadily as an actor, writer, and director, building out a career on both sides of the camera. He's married to model Grace Rodriguez, and the two are raising their children together, largely